I think I've found the world's strongest man, and I'm not saying it in any facetious way. Well, I'm going to talk today about Colton Engelbrecht, a South African powerlifter, and I'm going to go through his numbers and explain why he might not only be the strongest in the world right now, but he could be the strongest of all time. And there's something that makes him even more impressive than that. Now, before we do, yes, I've won strongest man on earth, I've won world's strongest man, but it's not purely about strength. If you're looking for the strongest person, your best bet is to look at powerlifters. They are stronger than strongmen because we have elements of athleticism and mobility in our sport. They are just purely, can you move a barbell with very strict standards? Personally, I believe that does a better job at finding the strongest person and world's strongest man on earth. I believe these contests are vying to find out who is the best strongman in the world. Now, without further ado, Colton Engelbrecht, he's a South African, like I said, and he's only competed in South Africa. I cannot see any world championships, any world's titles, any huge shows that he's done, and I'm not totally sure why. Now, maybe some of these comps in South Africa are bigger than I know them to be. I'm not well versed in every powerlifting organization, all 300 of them, but in South Africa, he has done things that no one else in history has done. He has entered 15 powerlifting shows, and he has won 15 powerlifting shows. His competition numbers are a 970-pound squat, a 540-pound bench, and a 959-pound deadlift. Now, these are registered proper competition numbers, giving him a 2,469-pound total. This is the fifth best total of all time. But if it's the fifth best total of all time, why am I on about him potentially being the strongest man in the world and potentially the strongest man in history? Well, first of all, he has the highest DOT score for a male ever. This is a way that powerlifting regulates between body classes or weight classes, and this is how they determine who is the winner of the overall competition. So he's number one there all time. But I personally don't care about pound for pound comparisons. I just care who can lift more weight. I don't care what your body weight is. It's not a fashion show. It's simply, can you hit the weight? Now, I do want to say as well, he has hit these weights raw with reps. This is how most federations are of these guys who hit big totals. This is not in any way different to the other guys. It's also not in any way equipped. They're using a standard squat bar with powerlifting rules, a standard bench press setup, and a deadlift bar. The only caveat that I know is going to come in the comments is that he pulls sumo. I don't care. You lift the weight off the ground or move the weight however you're regulated to move the weight. Fantastic. If he does sumo, he does sumo. I don't care. Let me know in the comments, do you think sumo should be a separate category in powerlifting? This is a really old debate, but I'm happy to see what you guys think. If it's within the rules, do it. I've done that a million times over in strongman shows. But with the fifth best total of all time, even though he has a higher DOTS total than John Hack, legendary powerlifter, how is he the best? Well, if we dive into some of his training videos, he is capable of a lot more, in my opinion. And these are rough calculations. It's estimated 1 rep max. It's not perfect, but it's not that far off. So his most recent squat video, he did 893, and he said he did it for a 3x4. This estimates his 1 rep max at around 1,026 pounds. His bench, most recently, is 507 for 4. This estimates his 1 rep max at 563 pounds. His deadlift, he did 904 by 6, meaning his estimated 1 rep max is 1,064 pounds. This would put his total on a perfect day at 2,653 pounds. For reference, if I entered a powerlifting meet as I am right now, I would be able to do a squat of maybe around 950, a bench of, well, probably today 950. I think I could peak over 1,000, but today 950. Bench, I'd be able to do about 530, and in deadlift, without straps, in powerlifting rules, I think I'd be able to do around 930. This is a couple 100 pounds behind Colton, and people believe me to be the strongest man in the world. Now, the current best total of all time, raw plus reps, was Dan Bell at 2,607 pounds. Colton at 2,653 pounds is 46 pounds ahead of Dan Bell. Now, I told you, there was something that made him even more impressive. I said he had the highest dot score ever, which pound for pound, great. But let me read out the top 5 all-time powerlifters, and we'll talk about their body weights as listed on Open Powerlifting. Number 1, we have Dan Bell. He did this in 2021. His body weight was 397 pounds. Next, we have, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this name, Peter Petrus. I think it's close. But he was 375 pounds when he hit his total. Next up, we have Jesus Oliveira, who is incredibly impressive in his own right. He has this total with sleeves and in a tested federation, but he was 393 pounds. Next up was Andrei Milanichev, but his weight isn't listed, but he is also huge. So the average weight of these guys who have beaten him is somewhere around 380 to 390 pounds. Colton Engelbrecht competes under 242 pounds. That is his weight class. He is giving up 140 pounds, and he is beating guys who are all-time greats in heavy weight class. Now, he's beating these guys in training. Granted, there's different rules and circumstances and standards, but regardless, we're talking of 376,990 powerlifters. Colton has a capacity to go number 1. And if you're number 1 in powerlifting, it's my personal belief you're the number 1 strongest person in the world. This is potentially a pivotal time. We have Strongman, where we started with body weights in excess of 450 pounds, and now most of the guys at the top are 320 to 350 pounds. The exceptions are usually because they're excessively tall, like a Tom Stoltman. We have powerlifting, where now a guy's showing that you can be 240 pounds and compete with guys who are 100 plus pounds heavier. I've done some research for a later video, and one really interesting thing, when we go through the lightweight results and the heavyweight results in powerlifting, it only starts to make a difference when you add that body weight at the advanced, elite, and pro stage, when you're in the top 30 percentile. At lower percentiles, heavier body weight statistically actually hasn't helped people at all. Now, of course, weight does move weight to an extent, but you do wonder if someone like Dan Bell or Jesus Oliveira, if they dropped 40 or 50 pounds, would their squat maybe suffer? Sure, of course. But would their other lifts go up? Potentially. If we break down how exactly Colton has been able to match these guys, even though he's much smaller, where I say you're going to give up some on squat, just strictly the mechanics of having a big belly compressed against large thighs, that's going to give you a spring out the bottom. It's going to make your squat much better, much easier. He gives up nearly 100 pounds to the average squat weight, and he gives up 132 pounds to Dan Bell's incredible 1102 squat in sleeves. But how does he make it up? Because he also is behind 60 pounds on Dan Bell when it comes to bench press. But when it comes to deadlift, this is where Colton is absolutely next level. He has a 959 pound pull. That is 56 pounds ahead of Dan Bell. So really, the only difference we're talking about is the weight in the squat. Now, if you are larger, this is now general strength advice. If you are a larger person, you're going to tend to be a better squatter, and you're going to tend to be a worse deadlifter. This might be a controversial take because Eddie was massive when he did his, Thor was massive when he did his, but Thor was proportionally massive, Eddie was just massive. So it can help some people. But what most guys find, from novice all the way up to the top level, if you stack on a whole bunch of weight, trying to get down into a deadlift position just changes. It feels more awkward, it feels uncomfortable, and your pull just won't be the same. If you try to get down into a deadlift in the same stance fat as you do skinny, relatively skinny, your legs have to come out because your stomach has to go between your legs. And if your legs go out, you then have to bring your hands out. And we're talking a position that's not a snatch grip deadlift, but wider than shoulder width in terms of your grip. This isn't ideal. This is going to lead to excessive reliance on your upper back to stay stiff. It's going to rely on your grip a little bit more, and it's going to mean that your number is relatively lower. And that's exactly what we see with Colton Engelbrecht. So if we constructed the ideal powerlifter in terms of height and weight, Colton might be that dude. Now, his body weight at 242 pounds, that is relatively light in the world of powerlifting. But if we take his height, which is unknown, we can't find him. That could be the secret. Maybe Colton is particularly tall, particularly short. My guess is he's 242, somewhere around the 5'10" to 6 foot mark, and relatively lean. You can see bicep veins, you can see veins in his shoulders. He is a very well-conditioned athlete. And it gets back to the point that you really don't see a point at a certain stage, or personally, I don't really see a point at a certain stage of being obese in the name of being strong. This seems to be going by the wayside. To me, if you wanted to be the best powerlifter in the world, let's call you 6 feet tall, potentially a lean 300 pounds at 6 feet tall would be great. When I say lean, we're talking straight sport lean. We're talking 12 to 15% body fat, sort of can see abs, no big gut on you, that type of situation. But give some love to Colton. His Instagram is Colton_the.limit.breaker, aptly self-proclaimed. Somehow this dude only has 26,000 followers. I have no idea how, because it is incredible to see him do what he does. And it just doesn't make sense. Does he look like a strong guy? Yes, of course. Does he look like the strongest man in the world? Absolutely not. If Colton and I were walking down the street or we walk into a bar, they might think we're the bouncers. You wouldn't stop us and ask for a picture because you think you see the freakiest people on the face of the earth. But Colton is that dude. Absolutely, Colton is that dude. And it's cool to see. It's cool to see. Let me know what you guys think. Could Colton be the best powerlifter of all time? Could he have the highest total ever under 242 or under 110 kilo body weight? I think it's possible. Based on his training, of course, has to clean it up, has to get a bit stronger. He's deadlifting with straps in training. He hook grips in competition. Hook grip has to be locked in, has to be strong. Everything has to go right. But to set an all-time record, everything does have to go right. That's just part of the game. Big shout out, Colton. As per usual, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to get your powerlifting numbers up to scratch, up to what you are capable of, check the link in the description for programs, and check the link in the description for Lift Heavy Be Kind merch if you'd like to support the channel and you want to invite more people into the gym as a welcome open space. As per usual, lift heavy, be kind, and we will catch you tomorrow.